follow, right? And so at the lower level, then Jacqueline Hillman and her attorneys, they present a case and they actually prevail. So at the circuit court level, we have wife number 2 who actually prevails. And so, I'm sorry, wife number 2, yeah, actually prevails, right? And so at the Supreme Court level, so as you can imagine, then it is Moretta, and of course she is wife number 1. She doesn't like that, and so then she takes it to the appeal level, and she appeals to the Supreme Court of Virginia. And at the Supreme Court of Virginia level, then she wins, okay? And so because we can keep taking this higher, what ends up happening is that, of course, Hillman then says, you know what? I am going to take this case up to the Supreme Court, and I'm going to see whether or not the Supreme Court is actually going to grant me the opportunity in order to argue this case before the Supreme Court. And I mean, I read the entire case. There were a couple of issues that were really at the center of the debate, but I think we can sum it up by saying, quite frankly, you know, the issue is really who wins. Is it the intended beneficiary or is it the designated beneficiary? Who's going to prevail when a case like this happens? And, you know, quite frankly, I mean, we all have heard of cases like this with Mr. Hillman, all right? We've heard of cases in which, you know, we have wife number 1 and we list everything on wife number, you know, with wife number 1 as the beneficiary. And, you know, the FEGLI forms are, quite frankly, they're much like anything else that we fill out in life. We fill them out at the beginning of our federal government service. We stay there for 30 years. We never think about it. Unfortunately, life happens. We might get divorced. You know, we have children, and we never go back and revisit the original form that we completed. And so then, unfortunately, because life happens, we pass away. And then we have situations just like this. I mean, I think if I just took a poll out there of the people listening, I mean, we can certainly say that unfortunately, you've heard about this situation happen, whether it's in your own family, whether it's with a coworker, you know, I mean, you've heard of this kind of situation happening. And so Hillman, it may be a case in which, you know, not that many people, I guess, are upset enough to actually take their case to, you know, the Supreme Court. But certainly we've heard about cases where, like I said, you know, the funds, whether it's the bank account, whether it's the life insurance, it ends up going to not the intended beneficiary, but it ends up going to the designated beneficiary, who is the person that's actually named on the form. And so one of the things that happened, and one of the things, I guess, that was ultimately being litigated, you know, at the Supreme Court level was, well, what do we do? What do we do when we have a statute like we have with FEGLI that pretty much says, okay, the person comes into federal government service, they fill out their paperwork, you know, they have the right to list anyone that they want, you know, to act as their beneficiary, right? They make the decision as to who gets the funds. It doesn't have to be someone that you know, that I guess is their spouse. It doesn't have to be their children. Quite frankly, they have the right to exclude or include anybody in that category as beneficiary that they want to. And so what do? When, you know, ultimately they get married and, you know, they get remarried and they forget to make and go back and to make a decision to change to their new spouse, right? Or does state law prevail? You know, is Virginia law going to prevail, you know, without any consideration that's being given to the federal law? Does Virginia statute trump basically the federal law? Does Virginia statute say, you know what, I know that this person meant to have it go to the current spouse. I know that's what they would have wanted, even though they may not have actually put that, you know, on the form. Do we just make the presumption and say that's what they wanted to do, that's what they intended to do, and so therefore we're going to do it for them, right? And so, you know, at the Supreme Court level, the Supreme Court said, you know what, this is a very interesting case, but this has already been decided. And so we need only look back at two cases, okay? And they went back, and in particular, they looked at the Wisner case, and they looked at the Ridgway case. And so the Wisner case was a case very much like this case here, very much like Hillman, except that it dealt with the National Service Life Insurance Act. And so that is an insurance act. It covers members and veterans of the Armed Forces of the United States. And the Ridgway case, again, a very similar case, dealt with insurance benefits, dealt with the same issue of where we have a widow, and then, of course, we have someone else who is the named beneficiary, someone other than the widow or widower, right? And so in the Ridgway case, it was actually the Servicemen's Group Life Insurance Act of 1965 that was the source of the litigation. And basically, in all of these three acts, the federal government has said, the employee has a right to name whoever they want to as their beneficiary. The employee's right can't be waived. It can't be restricted. Again, we go back to saying that they have the right to change their beneficiary without the approval of the current beneficiary. They have the right to change the beneficiary without the knowledge or consent of the current beneficiary. The employee is in total control. And so, again, the Supreme Court kind of looked at this. They said, we've already kind of heard this case before. And so what do you think happened? Well, I think much to the surprise of everyone, and I don't really know why it was a surprise because I think it should be very clear, but it was a unanimous decision, again, written by Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Everyone agreed. The named beneficiary who is listed on that form is entitled to the insurance benefits. And so she's entitled to the proceeds. There is no one that can come along and say, no, I was the intended beneficiary and therefore I'm going to sue you and get a judgment against you. It simply didn't work that way. And so it was once again a reaffirmation that the federal law is going to trump the state law. And so unfortunately, Virginia state law, like I said, with part 1, part 2, it was trumped by federal law. So in that case, we had a situation in which, very unfortunate situation, but we had a situation in which the person who thought they should have received the benefits, the person who was, we'll say, the last wife, unfortunately, is out of the insurance proceeds, okay? So, it's a very unfortunate situation, the Hillman case, but I think it does a couple of different things for us. It kind of illustrates to us the importance of having a comprehensive wealth management plan. We say this to our clients all the time. We take this kind of holistic approach at Harbor Point Wealth Management that, you have to have not just an investment management plan, you have to have a plan that encompasses asset protection, encompasses estate planning. And I tell you, quite frankly, we go through the estate planning process with our clients all the time, and this is the very thing that we make them do. We actually make them go back, look at their actual, life insurance plan, make them look at all of their non-probate assets and find out who exactly is listed. And a lot of times, people say, well, I know who did that. I know who's listed. I don't have to do that. Yes, you do. And I think the Hillman case that we talked about today makes it very clear you really want to know who is your designated beneficiary. And so you really want to take care of this. I'll just mention quickly that if this is something that is of interest to you, we have an entire estate planning university. These are the types of issues that we deal with at Estate Planning University. If you're interested in attending our next session, you can give us a call at 866-621-6660, or you can go to our website, www.harborpoint.us. Or if you are just interested in having a second opinion about your investment portfolio, then certainly this is the time to do it. Again, the number is 866-621-6660.
News Talk 1450 WOL has a new website. Listen live at WOLDCnews.com.
Welcome back, everyone. In case you're just joining us, you are listening to Turk Thursdays, the Tax Efficient Retirement Planning Show. I am your host, Karen Scott Mims, also known as your Tax ESQ. And in these last few minutes of the show, as usual, we are going to have our Ask the Expert section, or as I like to say, Ask Tax ESQ. And so if you're interested certainly in having your questions answered during this segment, then please let us know. Again, you can give us a call at 866-621-6660 or go to the website and submit your question. But this question actually comes from someone who attended, I think it was one of our workshops, maybe 3 workshops ago. But in any event, you know, last week we talked about long-term care. And so this person had really a 2-part question. They wanted to know whether FLTCIP was a partnership compliant plan like we had talked about. And for those of you who don't know, FLTCIP is actually the federal long-term care plan for federal government workers. And the quick answer is no. So FLTCIP is not a partnership compliant plan. That's part number 1. And then part number 2, he also wanted to know whether veterans have a special plan for long-term care. The answer is a very definite yes. It is a plan that actually covers not only veterans, but it's very specific. You know, you have to have served in duty during these very specific years. There's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, but yes, it does cover the actual veteran, and it covers their spouse as well. And I think this is a topic that is really of such importance. We're actually going to devote an entire show to this probably in November, because I think November would be a great time for us to certainly, as we should all year round, celebrate those great individuals, especially during the month of November in honor of Veterans Day. And so we will, as I said, have an entire show that's devoted to veterans benefits, and in particular the veterans benefits that are associated with long-term care. Very specific, you know, kind of benefit. Like I said, a lot of hoops that you have to jump through, but certainly these are benefits that I have to say I think most people have no idea that these benefits are out there. And if you can imagine, you know, how this is money that's just sitting there. And when you think about having to pay the cost of long-term care and you know, how much that cost could be, then certainly you want to be able to take advantage of this. And so I also will take this time to mention that certainly in November we're going to have our Wills for Veterans. And so we're going to do all of this as we celebrate, like I said, our veterans in the month of November. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed today's show. Certainly